One Piece chapter 1024 is out, and this time we get a lot of Yamato, we get some backstory, and we get some RoofPiece. The color spread this week is a continuation of last week's. Like I said, we're going to get 3 total, so we'll have one more after this. But this one basically has the Straw Hats in the center of the panel. In the background you can see some of the Supernova, you can see some of the Alabasta favorites. We even have some of the gods in the background. You have God and Nell, and you have Goldie Roger. I always love the new color spreads, especially when we get like the long ones like this. I think like for Film Z, we had a very long one that had a bunch of different Navy characters in it, and this is kind of giving me that same vibe. Now before we get to Yamato stuff, we do bounce around to the rest of the crew just to see what's going on within the dome. And we start with Usopp, who's basically pretending he's using CoC Haki to knock out some of the beast pirates. Turns out this is because Big Mom is fighting somewhere in the area, and the echoes of her CoC Haki are knocking people out. Not only is it crazy that it's reaching pretty much outside of the fight like this, but it also means that Big Mom is fighting Kid and Law using a lot of CoC Haki. In all honesty, I don't think she would need to fight them, but I'm curious to see why she's doing it now. You know, what's pulling that out of her? Has she gone into one of her craze states? Is something happening that's making her use CoC Haki? Because in a general fight, I think all she needs is basically her pure raw strength, her homies, and she's good to go. Nami's on the Denden Mushi talking to Frankie, who's trying to manage all the beast pirates that are trying to rush into the life floor. And basically he's giving out orders to make sure that everyone holds them back as much as possible. And this is one of the things I love about Frankie, because when it's a big situation like this, he always seems reliable. He's always doing something that helps out. So like right now he's taking charge and making sure no one makes it to the floor where Sanji and Zoro are fighting. It reminds me a lot of how King was acting at the beginning of this fight. Basically he was micromanaging. He was taking a look at everything and kind of giving the orders, making sure everyone's moving in the right place. We get a glimpse of the Heart Pirates as well, or at least the ones that are within the dome right now, fighting alongside Frankie. And it's good to see them because we did get mention back a few chapters ago about what their team was up to. We didn't have any updates on them, and now we see that they're with Frankie and they're fighting against the Beast Pirates. We pan over to Brook, who's just escaping the fire. He's got Robin in tow and she's completely unconscious, so the demon move that she used must have really taken a lot out of her. And that honestly makes me think more about it being hockey based, because it seems like it drained her stamina completely. And I've seen Robin create huge versions of herself before, like she's created giant legs, giant arms, and they don't drain her anywhere near as much as what this took out of her. Brook reaches out to Jinbei to see if he has any ideas of what's going on the fight. Jinbei doesn't either, so I think what's basically happening here is we're seeing all of the Straw Hats kind of gather up, and they're trying to get control of the situation because they really don't know what's going on. They've been kind of preoccupied in their own fights, and now that they're done with that, you know, they're kind of wondering what's happening with Luffy, what's happening with Kaido. And obviously Kaido isn't here, so where is Kaido at right now? You know, who's holding Kaido back? Because they know Luffy pretty much said he'd be back, which means at some point he was removed from the fight. But I think their focus now has switched to making sure that Zoro and Sanji get their fights and are able to accomplish those. Once those are done, I think they're going to worry about Kaido and Luffy. Now let's hop back to RoofPiece. We have Kaido and we have Yamato still going at it, which is just an impressive feat all around. The fact that Yamato is able to stand ground against Kaido for this long, to take hits, to trade blows, the endurance, the strength, all of that needed to kind of tangle with Kaido, that speaks volumes about Yamato's strength. Now if we take a look at the moves that Yamato uses here and in the previous chapters, it becomes clear that at some point Kaido must have trained Yamato, because each move is a clone, a copy of what Kaido's doing. You know, we get Yamato's arrow, we get Kaido's arrow, we have Thunder Bagwa's. They even had similar flame breath attacks. And I think the argument can be made that Yamato may have learned this by watching Kaido, but I would likely assume that at some point Kaido did train Yamato to do these things. And I would assume that happened after Yamato ate the fruit, because at that point, a very rare fruit, and then we have the reveal today of CoC Haki. So Yamato has the potential. Kaido saw this and he thought to train Yamato as much as he could. Giving me a chance to step into a flashback, and this is probably roughly 20 years ago, because this is after Oden's death and when Yamato was a kid, basically the first time Yamato gets chained up. and this is where we see the Conqueror's Haki get unleashed. Now, Yamato has no idea what just happened, but Kaido makes it very clear that Yamato used Conqueror's Haki. However, since Yamato is still declaring to be ODEN, Kaido still has that mentality of, well, if you're going to be ODEN, then you can die like ODEN. He decides that it'd be best to leave Yamato in a cave full of basically some angry master swordsmen, probably that he defeated and locked up here shortly after ODEN was killed. And the way Kaido is saying it up here, he's basically giving the samurai weapons, and Yamato's even talking about how the samurai would resent Yamato being the child of Kaido and also declaring to be ODEN to people who respect and pretty much look up to ODEN, and not only has had to watch him die, but are now captive for the person who killed him. Even so, it seems like Kaido does not expect anyone here to die, because he looks back and he tells Yamato, I thought you were ODEN. And at first this kind of seems like, well, if you're ODEN, you can die like ODEN, but it also seems like he's saying, if you're ODEN, you should have the willpower to make it through this. You should be able to get past this. And it reminds me of what he did with Momo when he was torching the castle. Instead of just dropping him off a ledge and killing him, he throws him back into the castle. It feels like a very prove your worth type of thing, where Kaido is basically like, I'm giving you the chance to prove that you are worth living, that you are worth keeping around. Don't fail me. Now the samurai take up arms, and clearly they're not going to kill Yamato. Instead, they elect not to eat so that Yamato can, in a similar vein of samurai never hungry. You know, we saw this with Tama, we saw it with Momo and Kinemon, all proudly proclaiming the same thing. And while some of their features are obscured, we do get to look at some of these samurai, and one of them looks a lot like Zoro. He even has the Shimotsuki crest on his back, which we see before he tries to escape the cave. If we hop back to chapter 942, Yasue mentions that him and 3 other daimyo were approached by Kaido, and basically Kaido gave them a chance to join or to die. And while Yasue lived, the other 3 daimyo died. It would make sense that these are the 3 daimyo that pretty much fought against Kaido and died those 20 years ago. That would make this man Ushimaru Shimotsuki. And I think that we get a lot of focus on this particular samurai because it is Ushimaru. And we don't really get focus on the other 2 because while they are relevant, they aren't as relevant as Ushimaru is. In the 10 days they spend in the cave, the samurai pretty much help Yamato read through Oden's journal, and they find a new connection with Yamato. One so strong that they decide Yamato needs to be there 20 years later when the battle against Kaido happens, and they are willing to lay their lives down to make sure that happens. With this, they cut Yamato's chains and they break free from the cave. Now the alarm immediately goes off, and what we can assume is that Kaido shows up and ends up killing the 3 of them. Now initially my thought is that Yamato uses this chance to escape, but we know that Yamato was unable to leave for 20 years. Now we see the chains on Yamato's wrists, but we don't know if those are the same ones because they're supposed to explode if you get outside of Onigashima. However, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense if these were the same chains, because 1, if they were to explode, why were they, said to be wrapped on someone who's tied up in a cave? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And 2, I believe these are supposed to be sea stone, as they were kind of hindering Yamato's ability to attack, as mentioned by Fodder a couple chapters ago. My guess would be that Yamato got locked up at least one more time with different cuffs, and after breaking out that time, that's when we got the cuffs that we have in the present day. We then come back to the present, where before we get a beautiful Thunder Bagua clash, we basically get Yamato again challenging Kaido's decisions, his choices. And Kaido doesn't give us a clear answer because he hasn't been doing that this whole time, but it makes it very clear that Kaido isn't doing this just because he's an evil person or just because he wants, some kind of grandiose power. He has some kind of major plan set up that, to some degree, needs Yamato. In a way, Kaido's parenting reminds me of an even more extreme version of Garp's, where basically he's putting Yamato through the ringer because he wants to see greatness. He wants to see Yamato achieve things that he thinks are possible with that fruit, the strength, the Conqueror's Haki. All of that combined leads to great potential, and he wants to see that come out. The chapter ends with a clash of conquerors and no break next week. Honestly, at this point, I'm just waiting for more backstory. I need more lore for this. I need to know what's going on. That's the part that I've been craving. We got a little taste of it here. I definitely need more of it. I thought this was another great chapter. Like I said, I think we're going to be having some back-to-back fire chapters. You guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. Please like, comment, subscribe. Feel free to do the poll in the description, and I will catch you guys on the next one.